Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy Boulanger. Up next on the GM, will the Baltimore Ravens make the moves to contend at 24? Do me a quick favor, hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. So, as we all know, Justin BK is under contract, 4 years, $98 million, and I think we're all surprised that the deal got done that quickly. Uh, and as a result, the Baltimore Ravens are only $200,000 over the cap. So just a little bit of adjustment, and we will be able to do business in the new year. Nevertheless, there are some moves that the Baltimore Ravens need to make to put a contender on the field in 2024. I don't think we can just go rinse and repeat this season in order to get the job done. The AFC North is going to be much more competitive, I think, than even last year. We saw the Cleveland Browns pull off a trade with the Denver Broncos, bringing in Jerry Jeudy to be their number 2 wide receiver. We'll talk about that in depth in another video. We know that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Russell Wilson are in conversations, possibly Russell Wilson joining them and being their starting quarterback. And then we know that the Cincinnati Bengals retained T. Higgins, keeping their number 2 wide receiver in place. And so we know just from that, the AFC North by itself is going to be competitive. So I think that the Baltimore Ravens have 5 positions they need to address in free agency. I'm specifically saying free agency and not the draft because I think these positions need to be addressed now, more immediately, and then build depth, young talent in the draft. I think those positions are offensive tackle slash guard, running back, wide receiver, on the defense side of the ball, outside linebacker, edge rusher, and cornerback. Let's start at the cornerback position and then we'll work our way around. At the cornerback position, I think that we need to add some upgrade in the depth, right? We understand that coming into next season, that it's probably going to be Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens, who also needs a contract extension now. Um, but we don't have much behind them. We don't know if we're going to be able to resign Ronald Darby, who is not a young guy. He's actually 29 years old going into next season. He maybe even be 30 going into next season. And then we have not seen much, if anything, from JAD or Pepe Williams, who I think one or both of them will find themselves off of this roster uh, this offseason. I think that it's time for Daryl Worley and Kevin Seymour and guys like that to move on. So we need some infusion of talent and youth and depth. And so I think that a couple of guys who I've been able to see and watch them play are CJ Henderson, who is a high draft pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think in the 2020 draft, I'm pretty sure he was a top 10 pick, and he just couldn't find his way in Jacksonville. Traded to Carolina for a third round pick, and he played well in relief for the most part. Injuries got in the way, and then just been on a bad team where the offense couldn't get anything going. Defense stayed on the field. And so he looked much worse than he really is. He really is a good player. A lot of talent, has some speed, has some length. I think he's 6 foot or above. And he can play. I think that he is an upgrade over whatever we've had in depth up until this point. So I think CJ Henderson could be brought in on a bargain. He definitely has to have talent because he was a top 10 pick. Now, we know we've seen top 10 picks be a bust, but I don't think this guy's a bust. And I think he's worth taking a look at in free agency. I think another guy who's also out of Carolina is Dante Jackson. I think Dante Jackson um, is he's probably 28, 29 years old, a guy with a lot of speed. He was a 4-3 guy. He's had a couple of leg injuries, but when he's been on the field, he's been a right place, right time type of guy. A guy with some makeup speed, a guy who can play inside and outside, and a guy who is going to be owed some dead money from the Carolina Panthers, but if and when they release him. And so I think that the Baltimore Ravens would be served well if they look to pick him up in free agency. Also, I think that he could be a good depth piece. He's a good locker room guy, a good leader, and I think that we could do well to take a look at him also. Um, and I think a possible trade. I doubt if it happens, but I think a possible trade that's been rumored out there for a couple of seasons is them taking a look at going after a guy like Ajay Alexander. cornerback out of the Green Bay Packers. It was a couple of rumors about him and the Ravens. A couple of seasons now, and I think going after Alexander could be an option. I don't think that happens, but I think it could be. So those are the guys at cornerback that I think that we should take a look at, and then of course adding some talent in the draft, which we will talk about when we get to the draft conversations. I think that when we get to the outside linebacker position, now you guys know I've been a proponent of putting money into the offense, right? But it just doesn't seem like we're really going to do that, right? It seems like there's definitely a preference to invest over and over again into the defense. So I'm going to take that mentality right now, and I'd say at the outside linebacker position, if we're going to look at a big ticket item, I think the Baltimore Ravens need to go after Danielle Hunter. He is a guy that has been rumored and connected to the Baltimore Ravens for a couple of seasons, and the Minnesota Vikings just chose to hold on to him. They may choose to hold on to him again by offering him a big time contract, but I think the Baltimore Ravens should really pursue him, right? If you're already investing big money into the defense, why stop, right? Outside linebacker, edge rusher is a position that we've been trying to fill with a number one type guy for a couple of seasons, and we just haven't got that done. When we look at who's actually on the roster right now, Odafe, Ajabo, and who is that? Tavius Robinson, guys like that. None of those guys are a number one. I'm going to get the quarterback on my own type of guy. Understood that we were the number one sack leader in the league last year. But this guy, Hunter, had 16.5 sacks on his own last year, which almost eclipses uh, Jadeveon Clowney and Calvin Noy by himself, right? I think adding a guy like Danielle Hunter will also help the $100 million guy in Justin Metabike. If you have a guy on the outside who can get home by himself, then an offense will not know who to double, who to target, and so I think that also helps Justin Metabike. I think if we're going to go um, into this next season, I think we have to get rid of the questions at the edge rush position. So I think Danielle Hunter is the guy we need to pursue if we're going to go big game hunting. I've looked at his contract projections. I think I've seen 3 years 60 and 3 years 54 million. I think that's a good price. We can get him in, backload the deal, and make his first couple of seasons very manageable. Let me know what you guys think about Danielle Hunter. I think that instead of playing around, with the low budget guys, I think we need to just go aim straight for the top. See, here's my thought on that. Because we have not shown any real respect for our offense, and we have shown it for the defense, then why not just go ahead and go all in? Why keep playing around with it, right? So, and I think adding a guy like a Danielle Hunter could certainly help out the secondary as they, um, look to rebuild and retool back there as well. When we jump to the offensive side of the ball, when we look at the offensive line position, there's a couple of guys I want to mention. The reason why I said tackle slash guard, I think that the Baltimore Ravens should take a serious look at a guy like a Mekhi Becton. He's a top 15 pick from, I think, 2020 draft, a guy who was highly touted coming out of college, a guy with some strength, some athleticism, some length. I think he's 6'7", 300, and I think like 15, 20 pounds, and a guy who can do a lot of things. But injuries have derailed his career um, a lot. But he is coming off his best season, and I think because he's had a down first 4 years, the Baltimore Ravens could grab a starting level left tackle who could slide in to guard. Um, I think they could grab him for fairly cheap. When I say cheap, I'm not talking about uh, 3 years, 15 million. I'm talking about more like 3 years, 36 million, something like that. But to get a starting level offensive tackle who just may need a new team, right? You guys have heard me say this often. When you get buried with a team who is a losing franchise, who's a struggling franchise, sometimes you just struggle. So I think they really need to take a look at a Mekhi Becton. But if you want to go even cheaper, I think Resner, who is a guard who played very well last year in Minnesota, could be certainly an option. We have some young talent at guard, Sala, Voorhees, who we have no idea what he's going to be. and then Ben Cleveland, who we really don't know what he's going to be either. And of course, we know that they did not retain Zeitler up until this point. Resner is a guy who got picked up late in the season, but he started the last 11 games for the Minnesota Vikings, played very well. In fact, he came in and threw out the starter, meaning he replaced the starter and didn't look back. So I think he's a guy who could come at a reasonable price. He did not get the money he expected to get last season, and I think that he could still be at a bargain price, and I think he could be a good depth piece. Also, Hunt. I'm pretty sure the guard is Hunt out of the Miami Dolphins. He's a guy who's also on the free agency market. I think he's going to be more expensive than Resner, but I think that he could come at a reasonable price as well. And so I think that those are some guys that we should really take a look at. We cannot go into the draft still trying to figure out what we're going to do at guard and or tackle. When we jump to the running back room, okay. Now this is where um, we need we need to make a decision and make it pretty quickly. We understand who the big names are: Henry, Saquon, Jacobs, Swift, those kind of guys. And I think that I'm still leaning towards Derrick Henry. I know that Saquon Barkley has more speed at this point, probably. Maybe has fresher legs, but I think that Derrick Henry is a guy who we've been, kind of looking at from a distance over the last couple of seasons, and that now is our opportunity to go ahead and get him under contract. I think we can certainly get him under contract 2 years, 20, 2 years, 18 million, something like that. I don't think he's going to be asking for anything extraordinary, and so I think that Derrick Henry and or Saquon Barkley, I'm cool with either. uh, or should be, not even could be, but should be our options in Baltimore. We need to be able to solidify the running back room early and then go into the draft, maybe fourth round, and pick up another young guy to kind of build up our depth at the running back position. Now for the most controversial position on the entire roster, the wide receivers. The Baltimore Ravens have been looking for a number one wide receiver for some time now. And although they hit on Zay Flowers, they still don't have a number one. Zay may be a high level number two. He could be a number one, but to place that kind of responsibility on a second year wide receiver may be too much. But here's the real truth: there may not be a number one to be found for us in free agency. The guys who used to be the middle guys, Calvin Ridley and Marquise Brown, because of franchise tags and deals getting done, they are now the top of the food chain. Calvin Ridley, his contract projections are 3 years and 60. That's too much, I think, for Calvin Ridley, although he is a good player. Marquise Hollywood Brown may just have a bad taste in his mouth and may not be interested in returning to Baltimore. So that either leaves a trade to get a number one guy or we're going bargain shopping. My bet is that we're going bargain shopping. So let's look into the bargain bin. Um, Three guys that I'll pull out of the bargain bin. I don't want Gabe Davis. I don't, right? I've seen a lot of people talk about Gabe Davis to Baltimore, but um, I think that he's going to get a price or get a contract that's going to exceed his true value. Okay. I'm considering guys like Curtis Samuel, DJ Shark, and Josh Reynolds. All three of those guys offer something different. So let's talk about each one. DJ Shark is a true deep threat. He's a 6'3" guy, right at 200 pounds, who has deep speed. He's a proven deep speed guy, deep threat guy. And I think that we don't have that. Can Zay Flowers go deep? Yes. Can Nelson Aguilar get deep? Yes. But they're not really considered deep threats. DJ Shark is. He's a guy you can simply line up on the outside and tell him to go. And because he's 6'3" and has some length, Lamar Jackson doesn't have to be pinpoint accurate. As long as he puts it in a catch radius, DJ Shark does have an ability to run under that ball and get into the end zone. And so DJ Shark has been, kind of the victim last year of a bad offense, who end up showing off his true talent near the end of that season when they start trying to figure things out. But I think that he could be looking for a home for the next couple of years. And I think Baltimore should really just take a look at him because he offers something that we just don't have. Now, you guys may love or hate DJ Shark, but his talent is undeniable. You can't deny 6'3", 200 pounds. You can't deny 4'3" speed. You can't deny that he is a deep threat. And he's a former Pro Bowler in Jacksonville. So I think that we could get him relatively cheap. When you take a look at Curtis Samuel, he's a guy also who has a lot of speed. He's more of a possession chain mover. He is a 4-3 guy who can get deep, but he's more of a multifaceted guy. You can line him up in the backfield, throw him screens. You can line him up in the slot, and he can play outside. He has reliable hands. And I think that he's already um, got the best deal he was going to get when he went to the Commanders. So he is a guy that I think could come relatively cheap. Again, a guy who offers some more speed, and he's not a small receiver. He's about 6 foot 6'1", and I think that he could be super useful in Ravens uniform. And then the last guy is Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds is a bigger receiver. He's 6'3", 200 plus pounds, and he's been on several teams, but when he's been called into action, he has been a guy who can make every type of catch you need him to make. He can make the slant catch, he can make the intermediate catch, and he can also make the catch deep down the field. Um, I like Josh Reynolds because I don't think he's really been given a chance to show what he can do. I think that he may not be a true needle mover per se, but I think that he offers what the Baltimore Ravens thought that they were going to get or wanted to get out of a Laquan Treadwell. So I think looking at those three guys in a bargain bin situation, yeah, they're not exciting. They're not exciting, and a lot of times we're looking for that number one guy, but unless we trade for him this offseason, we won't get him in this free agency market. So, let me know what you guys think about any or all of the free agents that I mentioned. Uh, Super excited, man. We are in what I call the free agency period where tampering starts tomorrow, man. So, what we're going to be doing, man, is every day we're going to have an update on what's happening in the AFC North, specifically the AFC, and then the league as a whole as deals start happening on tomorrow. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and we're out.